Okay. Here for him. All right, good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight and for participating in this process with Monterey One Water. Supporting the forum this evening is myself, Rachel Godoyne, along with Mike McCullough, our Director of External Affairs, who will lead the presentation. Fred Marsh, our CFO, who is actually on parking duty right now and helping guide anyone still arriving to our location, but he'll be here for the Q&A period. And then, of course, we couldn't do it without IT. We have Russell Hammersmith and Izzy Chavez, who are helping us be able to host this virtually as well. So it is a hybrid forum with all of you in the room and with attendees participating online. So just as a reminder, make sure everybody is at the right meeting. Monterey One Water is a wastewater provider or sewer service. We're a public entity serving Northern Monterey County. Each of the cities and districts within our jurisdiction appoint a representative of elected officials to our board. So basically, it's all that inside water usage that goes down the drain, gets collected by your city, and then we convey it to our regional treatment plant, which is about 2 miles north of the city of Marina, where it's our responsibility to treat it and safely reintroduce it into the environment. So tonight, we're going to provide information on a proposed billing change. And after the presentation, we're going to first do questions. So an opportunity to converse with staff and clarify any points you may have. And then we'll open it up for anybody who wants to provide a public comment. We also have in the back public comment cards, and it looks like they're also coming around if you'd prefer to provide a written comment. The last slide of the presentation will also have a QR code if you would rather make an online written comment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who is going to share a little bit on the proposed billing change.
Thank you, Rachel. Hopefully I saw all of you outside guiding you into here. Thanks for being here tonight. So this is a public input session. So we're just going to provide you some information. And as Rachel said, we'll take questions about the presentation. And at the end, if you want to make a comment, you can do that at that time. Try to kind of do it like in the typical public meeting where you have 3 minutes to make your comments, and we'll go from there. Okay. Okay, so the proposed change. So we currently have a customer service team that manages the billing data at our facilities. And so when we have the billing data, we send it to a third-party vendor, which is AFTS. And that third-party vendor then sends out our bi-monthly wastewater charges to our customers. The proposed billing process change would, instead of having AFTS be the third-party vendor, the Monterey County Tax and Treasurer Division would be the vendor. And so this would become an itemized fee on your property tax bill. So the first question that we always get is, you know, this is a tax. And no, it's not a tax. This is a fee. And so this is much like, you know, the Seaside school districts or the Peninsula Unified School District put a bond measure on. It was voted on by the people, but it's on your tax bill, and that's how you get that. Another one is probably that you weren't voted on by the people. Let's say, for me, it's like the Monterey County mosquito abatement. They have a fee that's on the itemized tax bill. Groundwater Sustainability Agency, we can go on that are itemized fees that are also on the tax bill. Some are voted on by the people, some are just placed there as a service from the county. Not meaning that it's a service from the county, but a service that is parceled out among the residents of the county. Next slide. So why are we considering this change? And this is one we will generate some questions at the end. So, we routinely hear from our customers that, we have some outdated billing practices. We can't have access to some of our account information online. We've also had some vendor printing errors with our third-party vendor. So in researching, hey, what's our options looking forward? One of them was, obviously we go to another third-party vendor. A lot of those companies are out there. We have some unique characteristics that we can get into a little bit. We also started asking around to our industry peers, hey, what do you do as far as collecting payment? And one of the feedback that we got from our peers was that they utilize the county tax roll as their billing method. And so I heard Rachel talking to a person that was here earlier. Wastewater service is a mandated service. So this isn't like a utility bill. Like if you get fall behind on your electric bill and they can come and turn off your service, or your water bill, they can turn off your service. We're not going to turn off your wastewater service. We're not going to come dig up your line and plug it up and say, hey, you can't flush your toilet anymore. That's not going to happen. So it's a mandatory service, and it's obviously protecting health and public safety. One of the questions that we'll probably get into a little bit later is that we're a flat rate. We're not based on your water usage, and that'll come at another question, but we have a residential rate, we have business rates that are based on different types of usages from those businesses. We also know that if we went to the tax roll, this process would be cheaper for all of our customers versus going to the third-party vendor route. And then that savings of, it's roughly $400,000 a year. If you look at our 10-year CIP, it'd be around $4 million that we could reinvest into that capital improvement program just on the savings from changing this over to the tax roll. So this is the estimated timeline. And again, this is just regarding a proposed change. So we started out in the spring and the summer. We're gathering community feedback. Once we kind of gather the community feedback, we'll go to the board with the input that we received from community forums, the QR codes, the website, things of that nature. And the board will make a decision as to whether they want to move forward or not. I'm just going to say this hypothetically, if the board were to move forward and say, yes, we want to consider the tax roll as our billing vendor, then we would start notifying all of our customers in the winter and the spring of 2024. And then in July of 1st, 2024, that's when all of our bi-monthly billing would stop. And then October 2024 is when you'd see the wastewater service fee added onto the property tax bill. Okay. So as again, a hypothetical statement here of saying what this would look like administratively. So in the May, June timeframe, the M1W board approves our budget, and we also notify those customers if there's going to be any rate change at that time. Then in August, so this is if we were going to the tax roll, we would notify each customer about the approved rate that the board just approved. And then the customer service team would then upload that data to Monterey County in preparation for going to the tax roll, as you see it being mailed in October. And then normally the tax bill is due in December or April. People often pay it in December. Sometimes they delay it to the second payment in April. Next slide. So when we started down this road of even considering the property tax bill, we were listening to our board of directors. We were talking to other entities, including the tax treasurer division. And they informed us that they were considering utilizing a new payment method for paying your property tax bill. And what that would be, it'd be an online, an easy smart pay. So you can sign up to have your property tax billing on a monthly basis, along with all the other things that you see there. And they have an online payment. You can pay in telephone, pay in person, you can mail your payment. If you have a bigger tax bill, you can pay through electronic fund transfer. And then this easy smart pay would be another way they would establish a payment for property taxes. So Monterey County is currently considering this. Easy Smart Pay is in 15 counties in California already. So it's been implemented, and Monterey County is in the process of finalizing the contract with the Easy Smart Pay company. And so we're just waiting to see if it's going to go to when it would go to in front of the Board of Supervisors. Okay, next one. Bill adjustments. Obviously, when you pay your wastewater bill, it's the responsibility of the property owner. Okay, we understand that property owners, if they have tenants, will sometimes allow their tenants to pay the bill. But for this instance, you know, the property owner would need to notify Monterey One Water if there'd been any changes, change in tenant, a business, a lease, change in tenant, things of that nature, then they would notify us. In an event of a change, then, you know, we want to make sure that we're not overbilling or underbilling that property owner for these potential tenant changes. And it could be either issued as a refund back to the property owner, or we may have to adjust the next property tax bill moving forward. Next slide. So we've heard frequently, oh, if you move to the tax roll, you know, this is just another way for you to start sliding your large rate increases in without notifying all of the property owners or the customers, and that's not the case. We have to, if we are going to do a rate increase, we have to notify all of our customers of the pending rate increase. We have many opportunities for the public to engage our board throughout the budget process with two budget hearings. And then obviously we have a monthly board meeting where customers, residents can come and talk under the public comment period. So we're committed to transparency. We're a public agency. We have nothing to hide. And if people want to know information, you know, it's our job to get that information to them. So in response to COVID, Monterey One Water and the board put together a residential financial assistance program for customers. And so during COVID, you know, it was very helpful to those residents and customers that took advantage of it. It's a program that we feel is underutilized. And so we're looking at evaluating that program to how we can make it more robust so that we can potentially help more customers into the future. So you can kind of see we're looking at how do we make more people eligible? Can we give more credit to each customer with the assistance program? And how can we potentially help renters through the property owners? So this is a program that's we're looking at. We're probably going to go to one of our committees next month with kind of a revised assistance program. And so stay tuned as we make those modifications that'll be coming out, and we'll notify the customers in the future. So at this time, you know, we're going to get into the question feedback, not comments, just questions. So if you have any questions about the presentation, this is what this section is for. And so then once we get done with questions about the presentation, we can move into the comment period. And then you can see there, you'll have 3 minutes. If you want to come up to the podium, state your name for the record, you can do that. That'd be great. And then we have some staff here that will help answer your questions. Okay.
I think tonight we're going to do something a little different, and we're going to start with our online questions. So Izzy, will you please let us know who has a question?
Yeah, there's one question from RS and one question from Chris Miller.
Okay, will you please give talking permissions to the first hand?
There's an online question from RS, from Chris Miller and Maria Lopez. First, we're going to go with RS. Okay. You have the ability to talk, RS.
Yes, hi. Thank you for this useful session. I know the presenter mentioned that sewer historically has been a flat fee. I was just curious, since essentially sewer is driven by usage, the more people in the household, the more sewer they would produce. Is there a reason we're not considering customizing the rate by like number of residents or square footage of the residents?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yes, that is something we have heard on repeat throughout these forums. the proposed billing change that we are currently considering is only about our vendor and how we bill. But in 2025, 2026, 2024, 2025, or 2025, 2026, depending upon how long it's going to take us, the agency is going to embark on a rate study. That rate study is going to include a neutral third-party vendor evaluating rate structure. So what the online commenter described. Can we look at how we bill residential units differently? So for example, maybe number of bathrooms. So one reason why the finance team is considering the county as our billing vendor is that we think that we'll have greater access to data like number of bathrooms related to a parcel that could potentially better help us adjust that rate structure if the rate study in the coming years determines that there is a more equitable way to bill customers.
Okay, the next speaker is Chris Miller. Go ahead, Chris.
Can you hear me now? This is Chris Miller speaking.
Yes.
Okay, my husband and I moved here in mid 1978 because of military. We purchased the house in July of 78, so we barely missed Proposition 13. My question is, I was really very livid and unhappy when all of a sudden you guys changed from MRW PCA to Monterey One Water. First of all, that required all kinds of money to rebrand everything and do everything. And my question was, why did you change it? Nothing, and we weren't allowed feedback to you guys. So that, and yet you're saying here, you guys are all transparency. Well, then whatever money you guys spent to rebrand everything to Monterey One Water was the purpose. I mean, if you're still doing stuff with sewage, was it to try to give it a positive change? I guess I couldn't understand that. The other thing is we're now retired. I don't like the idea of all of a sudden getting an extra amount of money put on my property tax bill in December and in the spring. I like being able to pay it every 2 months. One of my questions is, what's the best way to get my opinion registered regarding your proposal and my unhappiness with it with the Monterey County Board of Supervisors? Do I contact them directly? Do I contact you? The other thing is if you are now Monterey One Water, that's your name, how much of your expenses are all involved with water, as far as if that's a positive connotation of using the water to reuse it, where we either can drink it or use it on other places? Is that a very small, like 5% of what your costs are, but yet you're basing your whole name and reputation 100% on that? And then, so why are you, and so I guess I'm very disappointed, I go back to July of 1978, which was, like I said, a month after Prop 13. What is going on here that, I, as a local citizen, I live in North Salinas, that I have to put up with when you guys making all these changes? I'm a taxpayer. That it ultimately impacts me as one of your local citizens, and now I'm a retired person. So again, where's the best place I can register all my complaints and whatnot, such that I get heard other than here? Thank you.
All right, so let's go ahead and break that down and we'll, I think, share responses. Do you want to start with anything on the name change, or do you want me to share a little why? You want to start? Okay.
So thank you, Chris, for your comments about the name change. I think ultimately the board of directors provided guidance into that name change. Monterey Regional Water Pollution Control Agency was around as we were kind of founded in 1972. And we were moving along under that name for almost 50 years, roughly. I think the board at the time, when all of the name change was happening, was kind of saying, you know, what is the future of water? Where are we moving into the future? And obviously trying to recycle as much water as we could. It was all kind of this one water concept. And so, you know, obviously I helped in working with staff, an outside consultant to look at different options. And the board unanimously took that route and ran with it. It wasn't, we were thinking it could be like a 2-3 months process. It was a decision made in 15 minutes. So to the question about the cost of rebranding, it was really done on a shoestring, to be honest with you. I think we allocated like $10,000 just initially, and we did it over a number of months and over years actually to implement the full-blown change. So that's the name change, Board of Supervisor.
So I think I just wanted to kind of reemphasize what Mike was sharing about the name change is that we do provide 3 critical community services. And tonight's change is solely about wastewater, and the rates that you all pay as the residents and business owners of within our service area only support wastewater treatment. For our water recycling projects, the entities who are buying that water, they cover the expenses associated with producing recycled water through the costs that we get through the sale of water. So we do keep separate separate funds for each type of service so that there's not commingling of funds, and to ensure that the rates you pay go directly to maintaining and operating the capital that moves your wastewater and then treats it to a level only that is safe for discharge into the Monterey Bay.
So just real quick, Chris, your representative would be Mayor Kimberly Craig, who sits on our board if you said you live in North Salinas. And then we have a board of supervisor that sits on our board as well, and that's Glenn Church, if you want to reach out to him or his staff.
And this decision will be made by the Monterey One Water Board. So it's also critical to provide feedback everything shared tonight, we will document and provide to our board. So if you do speak tonight, your comments will be shared with our board. You can also use our online feedback form to provide comments, or you can call our customer service line to share comments as well. Those comments will all go to our board, and this decision will ultimately be made at a Monterey One Water Board level, so not at the Board of Supervisors level. Okay, and so we do have more questions online, and just as a reminder, we are in the question period. We will now move to the next question.
Before we move to the next person, I just want to remind anybody who's calling in over the phone that if you want to raise your hand, you can use *9 on the phone to raise your hand. So the next speaker is Maria Lopez. Go ahead, Maria. I think you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, my name is actually Sabrina Fier. I'm sitting here with Maria Lopez, and we've had a lot of questions about, what's going on with this wastewater management company. But the critical one that we're concerned about is because I, like the previous speaker, pay my property taxes twice as well, December and April. And the property taxes have increased significantly over the past 15, 20 years. And I'll tell you, it's getting to be nearly impossible to pay the property taxes in 2 increments. But now I'm curious, you were saying, somebody was saying about adding a fee at the end or on our property taxes. Can you clarify fee in comparison to the bill of $557 a year, is that fee $557 a year, or is that something different? And I would also like to know where we can reach out to pose more questions. I won't tie up the meeting for the other questions. Thank you.
Thank you both. So I'm gonna take the last question first. Mike is happy to have in direct conversation with customers. At the end of the meeting, let's go ahead and put Mike's email up on the screen and then go ahead and give him a, shoot him an email, and he'd be happy to set up a time to talk with anybody one-on-one to answer questions or address concerns. So Russell will do that at the end of the meeting. In general, though, it's Mike m@myonewater.org, but the one in My One Water is the number one, not ONE. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, kind of small.
Oh.
There we go. Getting better. There we go. So Mike m@myonewater.org. He is happy to connect with customers individually to further this conversation. Do you want to go first, Mike? Do you want me to go first?
So Maria, what did you say, Sabrina? So the fee that you're currently paying, so I think she said $557 a year, that amount would then be placed on the property tax as a wastewater service fee. So instead of you getting bi-monthly bills that add up to $557, you would get $557 added to your property tax. You're right in that it is difficult. Property taxes have gone up. I think we've all felt the pain of that. But I think one of the unique things that our board and our staff were kind of honing in on is that, trying to pay that twice a year is at the worst times of the year is tough. And so, if the county adopts this easy smart pay, there's an option available to incrementally pay that over 12 months versus two big payments. So, I think that's important.
And something to note, we do not intend to bring this action item before our board until the county has a final contract and is implementing the Easy Smart Pay program for the monthly payment option. So we will continue to do exactly this, gather community feedback, connect with residents and businesses, have individual phone conversations or at your community organizations until we're ready to bring this item before our board. Only thing that would change that would be if for some reason our board said, hey, bring it back. But we know that Easy Smart Pay and the fiscal burden, two payments may cause some. It's critical to our board as well. So I don't think we see them doing that. But that is just the one caveat, but that is the plan.
Right, next speaker is Joe Wibble. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, Joe Weibel. So just a thing which I may have been doing wrong all this time, but if I'm itemizing my taxes and I'm writing off my property taxes, do I have to remove not only this, but some of the other things that are tacked on to that property tax? I haven't been itemizing recently, but I suspect I may have been doing it wrong in the past because I forget that you have all these add-ons. So you follow what I'm asking?
Yep.
Hi, yeah, I'm Fred Marson, the CFO from Monterey One Water. So first thing I'll say, just in general, because it is a tax question, you definitely should, check with your tax advisor. In general, my experience is when you get your property tax bill, there's two parts. They typically have like a tax part, and then there's kind of like an other fees part. Ours is a fee. It's not a tax, so you can't include that. You cannot include that as part of a property tax deduction on your tax return. But obviously, we always tell everybody, check with your tax accountant first. So,
thank you.
Then the last speaker with a question is Anna Thompson. Go ahead, Anna.
Okay, my name is can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Anna Thompson. I have a place in Marina that I'm renting out, and I do not like it at all that this fee is gonna be added to my tax bill. I think, why are you doing that? What is the purpose of doing that? I don't consider it to be an easy way to pay my bill. I'm paying the bill currently every 2 months. I'm on automatic payment. And therefore, I feel that this creates more of a problem for me than if you leave things as they are. I appreciate that you give it, I'm against it. So I hope that you mark it as I'm against it. And it's, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in the slide. One of the reasons I was kind of the one who started with the idea, I've seen this implemented in a number of counties in our kind of surrounding areas. Delta Diablo, Contra Costa Sanitary District, Dublin San Ramon Services District, and we actually have a couple of neighbors that do the same thing, Pebble Beach and Carmel Service Division, obviously a little different area, but they've had all theirs up for a number of years. It's worked very well for them, especially administratively. And the biggest thing for us, we always try to look whenever possible, wherever we can look to cut cost. And basically with this program, we really identified that this can really substantially reduce costs, and not just on a 1-year basis, but this is on an ongoing basis. And I think they had to apologize. It's kind of checking for people outside, so I didn't need it on the slide. But basically what we're looking at is projected savings and additional revenues as well too, of about $400,000 a year. And basically that equates to about a $4 million total over a 10-year period. That's substantial for our agency. And that really allows us to really invest additional amounts that we need to invest in our infrastructure. And one of the things that's been brought forward a number of times too, just to reiterate this point, is a lot of people have talked about basically our fee structure, like for residential, basically, that in essence, it doesn't matter how many bedrooms you have. It doesn't matter how many bathrooms we have. It's basically the same flat fee for everybody. By using the county's data, because they have access to much more types of data, such as bathrooms, square footage, and all that, than we have in our billing system, we can really much more effectively work with a third-party outdoor consultant to really come up with a program that we think would really benefit a lot more people in results, and kind of would result in different levels, of the fees. This is not something that we wouldn't look to do. Our rates are in effect for 5 years, so it's something we'd look to do in the next couple of years. But it's a long-term thing that we've been asked about from a number of our customers, and actually by our board as well too. So we really feel by going with the county, it'll be actually a really good working partnership together that we can kind of provide some additional benefits, for our customers. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay.
So kind of on a related note to that question, one stat it sometimes is helpful to understand how staff arrived at this proposal, includes that currently the way our billing is set up is that we bill property owners. That's who we bill. That's who's responsible for the wastewater payment. We currently have a third-party authorization program. And so 6% of our residential customers choose to have someone else pay that bill. So that's where like sometimes a tenant might have their renter pay the sewer bill. So when we were looking at this and looking at impact, we do recognize that for some property owners who are renting, this may change how rate recovery or like rent recovery. But part of what staff were looking at was the data, like who is the customer and who's ultimately currently responsible for the bill, and what kind of impact or change does that have moving forward? Yeah.
One other thing I want to mention to people as well too is every year we come to the board in June, and basically our staff knows about this. basically when we have delinquent bills, we go to the board and ask them to basically place them as liens, basically with the county. By us going to the county, that actually eliminates the process for us. And we end up putting about 2,000 liens. And we realize kind of in working with the third-party realtors and title companies, it's a lot of work for them as well too. So that process actually we won't be doing that pretty much for most of our billing anymore, which we think for our customers will be a real plus. The county also has a much lower delinquency rate as well too, compared to us. Our delinquency rate is about 3 to 5%. The county's is less than 1%. So we really feel those are just another couple points that we really feel will benefit really not only just our agency, but our customers as a whole. So.
Okay, so we do have a few more online hands, but I think we're going to go to the room first, and then we'll go back online. So. If you have a question in the room, we are going to pass around the mic for questions.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I'll repeat it
Oh,
if
that's
others
perfect.
can't.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Yes, my name is Diana, and at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that what kind of started this process had to do with the third-party vendor for the billing, and that was sort of the catalyst for this change. So I was curious, why did we have a third-party vendor billing person in the first place? And if this proposal does go through, how will it affect the local office and the customer service employees that are there?
Do you want to take the first part and I'll take the second part? Okay.
Yeah, so great question. The reason why we basically used a third party is really helping with the issuance of the statements themselves. We basically have about 61,000 accounts that we bill over every 2 months in essence. So for us to basically, and a number of other companies use third parties to assist them with this, it really helps us with that and it allows us, the customer service staff, to really actually focus more on providing really, addressing questions, addressing address changes and lots of other just issues that our customers have and have questions on or need addressed. So that's actually the reason we did this, if I remember right, over 10 years ago. So it's been in place for quite a while. And what was I going to say? The second question was, oh yeah. Do you want to go ahead? Yeah.
Sure.
I can take it. I can take it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually another great question as well, too. One of the things we're going to look to do basically is reassign one of our customers. So we do what's called field audits right now. So field audits, what those are basically is we go around and basically check on a periodic basis just to make sure all of our business are correctly classified in the right categories for billing. And then we'll adjust their billings based upon the results of our audit. We'll actually be able to double the number of staff that were assigned to those field audits. And that really just helps to make sure that on an equity basis, everybody's paying their fair share of those rates. So that's what we'll look to do. We'll also look to just expand other types of customer outreach opportunities that we have for the agency. And the thing is, the customer service staff, we envision really no changes because we'll be able to kind of reassign them for several types of duties. So. The office, no, will remain open basically. What basically will happen though is this, if you think about it, with the property tax. So if you have your change in your mailing address, that will go with the county. But let's say a business changes, let's say they go from a restaurant to, let's just say, a home goods store. That you'd still be working with us because we still need to let the county know, okay, this address has this type of business and it needs to build at a certain rate. So do you want to? Yeah.
Can you go to slide 2 really quick? So one thing to note, these cost savings are deriving from changing the vendor, not changing our staff. Sorry, one back. And so the management of billing, as Fred described, is going to stay with our team, the people who know the customer and know the service we provide. In addition, on the property tax bill, next to the itemized fee is our direct line to customer service. So it's not the county who will field questions from customers on rates or the fee listed for, on an annual basis. It'll be our staff. And so that's the number that will be listed, and it'll go right to our staff, which includes support in both English and in Spanish. And then, yep, here and then there as well.
The change to the county, will that mean that you will still be able to sneak in rate increases and do it before announcing it to the public? Like this year, I got billed before the August 10 letter showing that you would bill us starting July 1st, $88. I got after I was already billed. So I kept in the dark there. Will that get even worse when you're no longer yourself, but county?
Nope, it's actually going to get better. So if we can fast forward one more slide, and here's why. Because each June is when our board approves our rates. So after the board approves the rates through a public process, then staff, if this proposal moves through, remember this is the hypothetical, staff will then notify every customer of what their rate will look like. And I think our plan is to show it both on a monthly basis, but then that times 12. So the annual amount that if you want to true up your tax bill, then later in the year. So we will notify you in the August timeframe, and your tax bill will then won't come until October. So it will absolutely happen ahead of time, and it'll ensure a little efficiency. Right now, that I think what happens is that process is pretty crunched. So sometimes, depending upon availability and schedules, things can shift. And so this gives many months. So as soon as the board makes that notice, we will notice you, and then it'll appear on the property tax bill in October. Yeah. Yeah. In addition, if we want to increase rates, we have to follow Proposition 218, which is a California mandate that mandates how we can change rates. And the way we do that is we have to notify every property owner, and then we have to go through a rate hearing where the public and the customer votes on the proposal. Where I think that gets a little confusing, though, is that like this past time that we approved max rates, the board approved it over a 5-year time period. So your rates, your max rate has actually already been set all the way out until the year 2025, 2026. Because again, we're on a fiscal year. So our finances run July 1 through June 30. And so sometimes a customer may not realize that July, the rate is going to go up. So there's kind of two pieces that address your question. Is there may be a natural progression of rate increases already set. That still needs to get to you. And in this plan would ensure that we get to you before October. And then there's the added layer of if we want to, after that period, increase rates. So there's two pieces of increasing rates and notifying the customer.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Some of your questions on the slide, I had some questions that were answered by the slides, but one other question I have, you listed multiple ways to pay. Do we get to choose which way we pay? Can we, I mean, in a nutshell, how does that work?
Yep. So how you pay your property tax bill won't change. Those are all the options. They align with our current options. So when we were going through that assessment process of looking at impacts, we wanted to make sure that you still had all the same options to pay and actually improve and increase options, which is what the Easy Smart Pay would do. Because one of the pieces of feedback we get from customers is they'd like to be able to pay their bill monthly. So one just added layer of this is technically we bill monthly. Because the way this works is that we bill certain zip codes on even months. And we bill certain zip codes on odd months. So we're actually always billing, but you as the customer are getting a bill only every other month for 2 months worth of service.
Yes, I mean, we've all gone through that where you say, yeah, I want to pay my bills, but the vendor or supplier says, well, we want you to pay it this way. You know, as far as method of payment.
Right.
Or, you know, like, some people want you to do online stuff, and I'd like to write a check and send it in the mail whenever the bill comes in.
Yeah, yeah. So if our fee gets added to the property tax bill, it has no impact on how you can pay your property tax bills. You still get all of the options. And again, our plan is not to bring it to the board unless the county adds another option for payment. That is that Easy Smart Pay program, which essentially works kind of as a non-mortgage based impound account, because California mandates when you pay your taxes, and how many times you can pay your taxes. So the way around it is a program like Easy Smart Pay has been established now, because counties have found, as property taxes, as have been noted a number of times tonight, have gone up, that residents and businesses need more ways to pay. So that's how this program was initiated and why the county is pursuing it to bring another option for payment. And so basically it's like you pay in each month, and by the end of the year, you have everything you need to pay your bill through that account then pays it for you.
Thank you.
I just have one question,
Yeah.
please. When we get to the point of this gets all settled, will you be sending out letters or postcards to people? Because we got a postcard.
Yeah, so we're so outreach on this effort was broken into 2 phases. So phase 1 is where we are right now, and that's trying to gather and solicit feedback so we can take that feedback to the board and they can look at, pros and cons of this proposed billing change, both for the agency and for our customers. Phase 2 of the outreach plan will be is an if. It will only happen if the board approves this change and we move forward with the resolution to put the fee on the property tax bill. And in that case, then yes, we are going to use diverse ways to notify you of the proposed change. So for example, a couple of them include like stuffing an insert into your bill. We probably will also do a postcard because for some people, postcards or a direct mail piece are still really effective. We also plan, so we go back to the schedule just as a reminder, bi-monthly billing would end in June. So that would be the last time you'd receive a bill from us. And so then your bill stops. And one idea we've had too is actually to send you no bill, but to continue to mail to remind you that you need to pay via the property tax. So you'd get basically a blank statement that has big font that says, you will no longer receive bi-monthly billing. You will pay this via a fee on your property tax bill, and probably more eloquent and succinct language than I just provided on the spot. But so those are some of the ideas, but it will need to be diverse. I anticipate probably running some ad announcements as well, to make sure that really gets communicated, and it will be as targeted as possible because phase 2 will really be about the property owner who's now going to be paying that fee.
Yeah, one revelation I found this evening was that you stated that all the wastewater is treated by Monterey One Water to the same standard. Some goes into the bay, some goes to pure water. Is that correct?
So your rates treat wastewater to a level that can send it into the Monterey Bay. The income we get from selling our water when we produce it, that supports the treatment costs
But
for.
you send the same quality water to the pure water plant.
We send, yes, we
Right,
send
okay. Well-
treated wastewater to those facilities that would otherwise go out to the ocean. Yes.
But I do add on that, there is for pure water and for our agricultural recycling. Yeah, we obviously there's
Yeah.
additional, sorry, there's additional types of treatment that need to be done to meet those agricultural and basically for injection into potable water. So in particular for the potable water, that's the highest standard that has to be met. And going back to a point we made earlier, that's why we have separate funds for those, because those are additional costs that are paid either with our partnership with the Water Management District in Cal-Am or with the Water Resources Agency. None of the wastewater customers pay those costs because those are additional standards that have to be met for those types of use of water. So I just want to reemphasize that point.
Okay, with all that considered, and this is a trust issue with your outfit. Since in 2010, the bill was 3308. Today it's 12104. That's almost 4 times the cost. I'd be interested in how that is explained.
Yeah. So when our regional treatment plant is now 35 years old, and the reality is that we live in a fairly corrosive environment, and for wastewater infrastructure, it's reaching the end of its useful life. In addition, Monterey One Water was formed in response to the Federal Clean Water Act in 1972. Prior to that, wastewater was collected by each city, and each city did minimal treatment, and then they put it in. I don't know that you can call it discharged, but they put it into the ocean just a few hundred feet off of the shoreline. And so what happened was those little mini treatment plants, they got converted to pump stations. So some of our pump stations are now 60, 70 years old. So we have old infrastructure. When our facility was in its infancy and teenage years, leadership at that time decided that the best path forward was to keep rates low. And I think that's something that, of course, community members want. So for 13 years, we didn't raise rates. Then they raised rates a little bit, then they stopped raising rates again, and then they raised rates a little bit. New leadership came in, and we now had a plant that was decades old. And ultimately, what happened was deferred maintenance and a lack of fiscal planning put us into a position where, like, when Fred started, we had almost no reserves. And if something happened to our infrastructure, we'd be potentially spilling sewer into the environment. So the rate increases over the last basically 8 years, right? 7, 8 years, about 8 years, are really focusing on that capital improvement plan that we referenced. And what is the 10-year plan valued at?
The 10-year, basically, it's about 183 million. One point I want to kind of address to your comment too about the 121. Just remember, when we send out the bill, obviously that's a 2-month amount, but it's for there's 2 components. There's our component. So our component for every single one of our residential customers for occupied units is basically 44 a month or 88 for 2 months. That difference is basically every of our member entities also have an add-on fee for basically their conveyance of the sewage to us. So just be aware of that. We've had increases over time, but so have our member entities
Does
as well
that
too.
explain the figure of 557 I heard earlier?
So
Because my yearly bill is 726 now.
Yes, so that is why you're going to hear different figures from each community member, because sewer in our area is a joint responsibility. Your city charges you and is responsible for taking it from your private lateral line, and they move it through the streets of your city and into our regional interceptor. We then have about 30 miles of regional interceptor. Once it's in there, then it's our responsibility and we convey it. And so your rates support regional conveyance of your wastewater to our facility and 2 miles north of Marina, and then the treatment just to the standard that's safe for discharge into the Monterey Bay.
Well, thank you for all that. And it's nice to know that it was incompetent management that deferred all that care and other facilities.
You know, and
Amounting to us being billed.
yeah. And one thing just to note now, so current leadership, management style, and actually a lot of funding entities, funding has changed a lot, right, over the decades. They don't really put you in a position to allow for deferred maintenance anymore. So like as we get loans on projects and various things, some of those loans actually require that through like the sale of water, you start putting away. And so this isn't as relevant to wastewater, but you start putting away dollars for future maintenance. So you don't have what happened in our community where rates are going along nicely. And then all of a sudden you have more exponential impacts. And then we'll circle back. And then we also need to go online again too.
My name is Laura Fenwick. My question is, who is on the Monterey One board? It sounded like the Monterey One board is the one that decides this.
Correct.
And it certainly sounds like it's in the best interest of Monterey One to do this because it would save a lot of money and just make it easier to have it done through the city. But who is on the board?
Yeah.
And so is this already I mean, it just makes me wonder, is this already a done deal?
No.
Or, you know?
This is absolutely not a done deal. It's not. I will say this is not a vote. Though it's not a vote. And that's why I really encourage everybody, if you submit feedback, don't just say I'm for or I'm against. Let the board know why. Because that's what the board's going to be looking at. We have 61,000 customers. And if you just look at voting rates in Monterey County, there's no world in which we can get a substantive number of customers to provide just yes, no feedback that the board could then make this decision quantitatively. It has to be made qualitatively. And so that's why I really encourage you to help them understand, because they are wanting to make sure if there are community concerns, there is a solution or a way to address it.
But the board is
Correct.
Monterey One. The Monterey One
Yes.
it's their board.
Yeah.
So it's like they're voting, well, they're deciding on these policies
Correct.
based on with the consideration of the public's.
Correct. Correct. So we're a regional public entity, meaning we represent 10 cities and districts. Each of those 10 cities and districts then appoints a representative to our board, and that representative is one of their elected officials. So if we can just go through it really quickly. Our current board chair is Chair Tom Moore from Marina Coast Water District. Our vice chair is Mayor Williamson from the city of Monterey. And then each city beyond that has representation by one of their elected officials. And you can find this on our website under About, Meet Our Board. And there's links to if you wanted to email your direct representative as well.
So while it makes sense to me from an efficiency standpoint to have it on the city do it just on the property bill, is there another way that the city could do that, or that you could do that without it being linked to the property tax? Because when you say transparency, yes, we get the bill and we can see it as the property owner. But as you know, as you just said, the city has fees on theirs too. There's all these other fees that keep getting added to our property tax. And to me, that is not transparent, because it's not my property tax I'm paying property tax plus all these other fees. And if I were to have rental property, which I don't, but I was a renter once, they never see that. And then it just looks like the big bad landlords keep raising the rates and are making all this money because nobody sees, oh, you're paying $700 or whatever it is for your sewer. The people, unless you're a property owner, you would have no idea. A lot of renters have their water and their sewer included in their rent. So I just feel like it really isn't transparent. I don't mind paying my bill, but I like to see what it is. I like to not just have it being a done deal on my property tax and then in the little tiny writing that's on there that my mortgage company is actually paying. So it bothers me to have all these fees added to a property tax. If there's another way that the city could bill us, that I'm happy to get my bill, but I don't really like all these to me, it is hidden costs on my property tax. For me, it seems hidden.
So let me try to answer your question, and then Rachel may have any additional comments as well too. So the short answer really is there's really only one of two ways for us to do this, is kind of either continue to do what we're doing now, is basically kind of using third-party software, third-party vendor to basically issue statements, twice a month, or I'm sorry, twice a month, what am I saying? Every other month, or basically to basically look to use it, use our county and basically put it on the property tax bill. But what we're looking to do with that, because I mean, you have a very good point. We don't want this to be hidden. That's not our goal at all. So our goal is looking forward, if the board decides to put this on the property tax roll, to reiterate some of the points that Rachel mentioned earlier. Obviously, it will be on the property tax bill. What we're going to look to try to do on the property tax bill is actually have it show two separate lines, one for our portion and one for the city's portion, so you can see the two, direct amounts. And then what Rachel mentioned earlier is basically sending out that letter sometime probably in July of each year, which would state, okay, this is basically what your monthly and what your annual rate will be. And I would envision on that letter breaking out two lines, one for basically the Monterey 1 portion and one for basically whatever city that you're in that portion. So you can see the breakout and then the total, as well too. So you'll but you only have to get that in essence once a year. And us, instead of us sending the statements.
To let all the renters know this is how much, why the rent's going, like. It's.
Yeah.
Yeah, the landlords do see it, but then people that are renting don't understand why rent goes up for them.
Like in this, like now, are you saying? Right? Because now they don't see the bill either. Because the renter doesn't see the bill right now, because we bill the property owner.
I don't think.
Yeah. So I don't really have a response.
Gave the bill to the renter, they would know. That's up to the landlord, right?
Right.
But the renter can't pay your property tax bill.
So,
I got my Monterey 1 water bill, and I said, hey, if they had to pay the bill, they could see it, they knew exactly how much it was. It's on my property tax, they don't even know.
Yeah. So I'm a renter, and I don't, I don't pay sewer. It's just part of my rent. When I pay rent, it's covered. And if there's a rent increase, then, I am assuming that's reflective of all utility bills or all home maintenance, right? And whatever home maintenance costs are and what a landlord is choosing, right? I've had a variety of landlords, those who didn't raise rent on me for many, many years. And now I have a current landlord who, has a different perspective on why they rent. So yeah, we are right. We don't have jurisdiction over that. We don't have jurisdiction over property owners and how they want to manage their rental properties. And I really don't have a response to your transparency question beyond just saying, yeah, I recognize that. And I agree. I think that transparency, and especially if we do this change, is going to be something that we have to really think about. We talked a lot about cost savings, so I don't want to come up here and be like, we're going to spend all those cost savings now and just move them over to having to communicate transparency. We have to find better ways. So like Fred and I have been talking about, quarterly or annual opportunities for outreach. How are we going to ensure that you can hold us accountable? So for example, one item that came up, a similar conversation in our first forum. And one suggestion was, is there any way for you as an agency to account for your savings and show us, how you reinvested it into the services you're providing? And that is something that Fred thinks is very manageable from an accounting standpoint, that we can just kind of modify our accounting just a little bit so we can track that. And then we'll take that data, and each year we feel like we need to show you how we're using that roughly what we're anticipating to be $400,000 each year. How are we reinvesting it into this capital improvement plan, essentially, which is what I think leadership is planning to do with the dollars. So I agree. And I think it is a big challenge, but I do think it's a challenge we can meet as staff to come up with new and creative ways to communicate with the customer. I also think pulling that billing element out of it, it presents a whole new way and relationship we can have with our customer to better communicate exactly what we do for the community, the service we provide, and where your dollars are going. So I think I hear you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Ferguson. Thank you for your demonstration this evening. I pretty much agree with your comments, about, I don't like the idea of the county being a collection agency for this service. I would much prefer to see progress on the rate structure. Maybe something like, because residences are all different sizes and they're on different sized property lots. And so consequently, they're going to use more water, but I know a lot of water is being used for gardening or, a car washing or whatever, but that still, I think that could be one of the categories of determining the rate. My last bill went up and I looked at it, was almost 14%. Now, I think earlier you mentioned that you had around 61,000 customers or something like that. Well, if all of those customers received a rate increase of 14.5% or close to it, mine was 13.6. That's a sizable amount of money.
You want to take where?
And you're right. What we talked about earlier is we basically did a 5-year rate increase. That's through 25, 26. And we talked about this earlier, this is one of the things we had to do. None of us like to do large rate increases. We don't. Frankly, our goal is to kind of keep them as low as we can. But we talked about this earlier. There was a period of 12 straight years where they didn't raise rates. I wish they had. I really wish they had. You look at some of our comparable entities, they're in a lot better financial shape and they're in a lot better shape to fund their needed infrastructure. We're at a point now, and Rachel was mentioning this earlier, our plan is it's about 35 years old, and we're coming upon major improvements. To give you guys just one idea, they're going to the board this month to replace 2 pump stations, that the cost of those pump stations are for 2 pump stations are $33 million. So, and we have a capital improvement program, like I mentioned, it's $183 million over a 10-year period, plus another $80 million on top of it that needs to be funded in the future. Rachel, Mike, and their staff, they've done an outstanding job in getting grants when they can to fund this stuff, but grants, for the most part, don't fund replacement projects. They fund new things. So our goal was to basically, when we did the 5-year rate increase, was to still try to stay somewhat comparable with our nearby agency, which we kind of are. We were at the low end before the study. We're kind of now in the middle, basically. But what we're hoping is going forward is to kind of keep those rate increases in the single digit area percentage, single digit area, and to avoid having to do double digit, because nobody likes to see double digit increases. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Well, naturally, the infrastructure has to take care.
Yeah.
There's no way to get it done.
No.
I think that easy schedule change could help moderate on water. Of course,
I totally agree. Our problem is right now, just to be honest, is that we don't have enough good, the data we have to try to do an equity study like that, it's just not sufficient enough to have. And that's why I kind of feel with us working in partnership with the county, we'll be able to get data on a yearly basis for a lot of these other types of, like, number of bathrooms we mentioned before, number of bathrooms, square footage, number of bedrooms. That would make it a lot easier when we work with a third party to do a rate study to come up with some different residential categories. Because if you think about it right now, in our commercial and industrial section, we have a large number of categories. We really have addressed that issue because a lot of our businesses have very different sewage and water usage. But you're right, we don't have that differentiation in the residential. And that point has been brought up a number of times during these discussions, and we realize that our board members have said the same thing. And so they've really given us strong direction saying, the next time you do the rate study, we want to see that. And that's why we really think in working with the county, one of the things I try to do is make it so that it'll be, as efficient and administrative easy for us to implement, but at the same time to be fair to customers as well too.
Thank you. I would think that currently it would be easy for Monterey Water One to get usage from our water companies, like Pines Marine and the coast, and work that into a fee schedule. You have a very nice website, and it was nice to kind of turn off the fee schedule, but I kind of thought, thinking like these car washing stations and whatnot, that's got to be low compared to.
And you bring up a great point, but I want to clarify a point. We're kind of in a little different situation here in our area, Monterey County, as far as who provides water. We have some public entities that provide water, and then there's private entities such as Cal Am and Cal Water. So public agencies, obviously, that's a PRA where we could request that data. Private, that's a very different situation where it may be near impossible to kind of get that from the private inviters. That's why for us, the property tax rule, that data is considered public information. So that's why we feel it would be a lot easier to kind of, work with that data to kind of do that kind of study. So, but it's a very valid point that you mentioned.
Yeah, one thing kind of just to add on that, I don't know that this helps much, but again, just like as we share information with one another, like Fred was saying, and our area is a little unique in that a lot of our utilities are private utilities. And so one question we had at a past forum was like, if you start doing this, then PG&E is going to do it and Cal Am is going to do it. One thing to note, to do this, we have to have a public board who votes and can have a resolution. So we can do this because we're a public entity. So we're a public utility. So it's not just anybody who could start adding on utility related fees. You have to be a public servant who doesn't have a profit or essentially a nonprofit. No, they require a resolution process. So we would go through because we're a public entity too. So we have our own Brown Act regs that we follow. So we would follow those to approve the resolution process. So basically it includes like publicly agendizing items, taking them to vote, opening it up for public comment. Do you want to add more? Yeah, on the Brown Act.
One thing, and all of Rachel's points, but also when we do the resolution every year, actually there'll be a couple of different resolutions. There'll be resolutions from the city and also the resolutions from us that basically state that the fees that we're giving them, for uploading, for putting on the bill, that they're in compliance with Prop 218 requirements. That's a requirement that they have to get from us every single year. So.
Yeah. So that's kind of what that resolution encompasses. It's our board, if they want to do this, has to validate and create a resolution for the county showing that we followed state mandates to set rates.
I have a quick comment and then a quick question. The issue that came up over here regarding trying to pass the fees on to renters, I wonder as a compromise for this change, if perhaps you guys could once a year generate a statement and it has the monthly thing on there, and then somebody could use that and pass that on to the renters and problem solved. And that's my comment, but I also have a question. The other thing, I've learned a lot tonight. So what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, the board is the one that establishes the fees, and it's set till, what, I think you said 25?
25, 26.
Okay.
So basically June 30th of 2026.
Okay, and then the rates were increased to try to cover the infrastructure, that crumbling issue. So are the rate increases on track to cover the infrastructure issues? Because if they are, then my question is that $4 million that you would be saving over 10 years from changing over to the billing, do you think the board would consider passing some of those savings on to us as consumers if it's not needed for the infrastructure?
They possibly could. That's a great,
Will they see this and get the feedback from this?
they
Those are
absolutely,
my questions.
they absolutely will. And they absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously we can give them, suggestions. Like Rachel said, we're going to give all the feedback and they can kind of give different direction of what they would like to see. As far as your first question, are we on track? So in some ways we are, in some ways we've had to deal with some issues. As I think most people know, unfortunately, the last couple of years, inflation has been very high. And it's been, and particularly it's impacted us in two big areas, which are a major portion of our costs, utilities and chemicals. I mean, as you probably know, like the US inflation rate the last couple of years, and it's down now, it's to about 3%, which is good. But, it was at between, in essence, 7 to 9% for a little while. Unfortunately, our utility and chemical costs were going up much faster than that because of supply chain issues and other things. They were on average going up between 10 to 20%. Now, we've done everything that we could to try to mitigate those costs. We've had some vacancies that we've kind of used to kind of offset those savings. We've been able to kind of stagger our projects a little bit, but it's a challenge. And, I'll be honest, when we get to, at the end of the 5-year cycle, we're going to have to see kind of where we're at. But the good thing I can say is that basically in this year's budget, total overall, we're investing about 1/3 of our total budget in infrastructure. So we're making substantial efforts to invest in infrastructure. So. Go ahead.
So on that note, actually, I think a couple comments ago, I asked Russell to pull up this budget in brief. So if you're ever interested in just kind of like big picture overview of our finances, each year we produce a budget in brief with recognition that as much as Fred loves to read all 250 pages of our budget, I don't expect all of you to read 250 pages. So we created this 2-page budget in brief to help kind of big picture understanding of where revenue is coming from, that separation of funds. Remember how incoming revenue goes into separate funds so we can keep wastewater separate from recycled water production. And then it kind of helps break down what you're paying to us for that treatment and regional conveyance, what you're paying to your city, right? And how it varies, rates vary by location. And then we break it down by expenditures as well. One of the things Fred and I we're really excited about this. We've been talking about doing at the end of the year, the post budget and brief. So an annual summary, an annual report. That's the flip side of this, of maybe now showing, maybe it's more graphically showing you some of that capital and where those dollars went. So that's something we're really excited about and we hope we're able to implement moving forward as we actually going back to one of your questions about staffing and how does this impact staffing and that reallocation of resources and how we may be able to improve customer service, which really is billing centric right now, and really helping customers on a daily basis with that, to maybe more of a focus in service oriented.
And yeah, like Rachel said, this is something that a number of our comparable entities do is they do some sort of either quarterly or annual report on what they're doing. And that's kind of what we're hoping, if we go forward with our with putting it on the tax roll, that we can look to kind of diversify our efforts a bit and really kind of publicize all that we do and how we're investing your funds, bottom line.
All right, so we're going to, okay, we're going to do one more in the room and then we're going to go, we still have some online hands.
Okay, yeah, good evening. Yeah, I have just two brief quick questions.
Yeah.
Okay, my first question is that why is Monterey One going to discontinue the bi-weekly billing as of 1st of July of next year? And my second question is how are we going to be billed? Are they going to bill us after every 6 months or every year? And since one fat bear?
Yeah. So it would be, so first part, we're considering this change for a number of reasons. Customer feedback has told us that our current billing vendor and process needs improvement. And so and that includes both feedback on the vendor and payment options. And so as we go back one more. Oh, two more. And so based on that customer feedback, we were directed by leadership to assess options out there. So we looked at other vendors who could provide billing service for us. We talked to peer agencies to see who they utilized. And in the process of trying to identify people to utilize, what we found is as a mandatory service, many jurisdictions tie wastewater to the property tax because it's a right that is associated with the property for human health and safety. And so in looking at that and then talking to the county and assessing how much it would cost us administratively to put it on the tax roll, we ultimately found that we could incur about a $400,000 savings each year, which would help about $4 million over our 10-year CIP plan. So reinvesting back into capital. So that's in a nutshell why we're doing it. It is not a done deal though. So it's not for sure going to happen. Cease June of 2024 and move to the property tax bill. But if it does, you would receive one property tax bill in October, and then you would have payment options in December and April. However, we do not plan to take this proposal to our board unless the county implements a program that allows for monthly payments.
Oh, now since you received that surplus, will that lower our tax, our monthly bill each month?
Yeah, so the current plan is instead of lowering each person's bill for $1 or $2, we're going to reinvest it in capital. Ultimately, it does impact your bill, right? Because we have to do capital improvement. We can't have your wastewater escaping pipes, and we can't have it lower than the treatment standards that are required for safe reentry into the environment. So while it's not a direct savings like, hey, we're going to take 400,000 and divide it by 61,000 customers each year, we are putting it into capital that has to happen with or without this cost savings. So in the big picture, I would say it does help rates because a directive we get every day as a public entity is to keep costs as low as possible, to be mindful of the high cost of living in this area, and that utilities, like you, as Fred said, like we're impacted by utility rates. And so we need to do our part to keep to provide a reliable service while keeping rates as low as possible. We have kind of addressed earlier some challenges we've had with infrastructure and previous fiscal planning, or maybe lack of fiscal planning, but that felt right at the time in the community, is really kind of impacting where we are today.
And I was going to add one quick point to that. Really, especially on infrastructure, the sooner you do capital projects, the less costly it's going to be. So the longer you defer stuff, the more costly it's going to be. And bottom line, when it's more costly, that means we have to increase rates more. So the sooner we're able to do stuff, it actually will save, the customers a significant amount of money over the long term.
All right, do you want to go ahead and let our first caller or virtual participant? No?
Yeah, so we'll be moving to online questions now, and the first individual is Lori Masuka.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead,
just
Lori.
as a reminder, we're still on questions and then we'll switch to comments.
Hi, thank you. I as I sat here for a while, more questions that I had were answered. And I have filled out the form and given my feedback. I'm definitely in the category of no, I don't want to see this. There's enough on the property tax bills. And maybe you covered it in the slides. I apologize. I had to join late because of work, so I missed all of the slides. But I do have a question. You guys are going to save $400,000 a year by, eliminating billing. I'm wondering, I don't really think the tax collector for the county is going to do this for free. So I'm wondering if in addition to our sewer bills and the city's portion and all those extra fees, the county's no doubt going to tack on some additional fee for doing the billing. And I feel like we're probably going to end up paying it. So I have a question about that. I do negate the whole idea of transparency. I echo another caller who lamented that he received the notice from you that our bills were going to go up, even though we all knew it was coming for the 5 years. We're not really prepared for it. The bill went through my checking account, and then the next day I got the notice in the mail. So I don't really think that's great optics for transparency on Monterey One Water's part. And I just feel like this is reminiscent of the call for all of these rate increases a couple years ago. I felt very frustrated on that Zoom call, watching the board sitting there eating their popcorn, their sandwiches, almost like they were saying, no, it isn't a done deal. You know, we're going to vote after, we're going to listen to you. But I felt like they listened, they just sat there and waited, and then all had their minds made up and it was a done deal. They just had to listen to all of us talk. So I just wonder, what assurance do we have that anything we say or comments we're giving and letters we're writing are really going to have any kind of impact on your excitement for wanting to make this change? And lastly, I just see this as a utility, and I like to have my utility bills separate from the tax bill because it's an exorbitant expense. I don't want to see anything more added onto it. And thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for your questions. So to address all of them, and I think I got them all, but I may have Rachel kind of fill in if I missed any. So the biggest question I think was about, what the county office will assess us as far as fees for providing the service. And that's a great question. So that rate is basically 0.75% of whatever we basically put on the tax bill. The key thing I want to note is that the savings that basically we've talked about earlier, that $400,000 projected saving, and it's a combination of a couple different things, but part of it is basically the processing fee savings. That's net of those costs. So you're not going to see a separate charge on the county tax bill saying, oh, we're charging you because we're putting on the Monterey One Water fee. They charge us. They don't charge the customers for that. And we've already reflected that basically, and we kind of should say that they're net savings because that's a very important point. Transparency. This is something that kind of Rachel and Mike mentioned earlier, that basically what we will do if the board adopts this is basically issue a notice, at the early part of July saying that basically these are what your new rates will be. Our Prop 218 process will not change. We will go through the same process on that as we've done in prior years whenever we're looking to change rates. What were the other couple of questions, Rachel?
I think they were more just feedback.
Oh, feedback, yeah.
Hearing on the transparency that we need to improve.
Yeah, the feedback, exactly. And I think the feedback, and we've mentioned this before too, what the great thing is we are giving monthly updates to our board, on the progress where we're making status on this, and we're letting them know the feedback that we're receiving as part of this as well too. And, should the county, and really the key thing to really note is we're not planning on going forward with this unless the county adopts that monthly payment option. And so at that point, that's really when we will present the full, presentation to the board and let them decide, do they want us to go and put it on the tax roll, or do they want us to continue to do it, basically bill on a bi-monthly basis? And was that pretty much everything? Okay, great.
All right, next online question will be from a user called RS. Oh, looks like they put their hand. Oh,
Maybe they want to do feedback. Okay, next question.
go ahead, RS. If you have a question.
Yes, hi, good evening. Thank you for your time. I have 3 quick logistics questions, but first I did want to echo a comment made by a prior caller that I had in mind as well. It would be really nice to see the savings from this project be passed on to the consumers, because we really felt the pain of that huge rate increase, even though it was, thank God, broken over 5 years. Essentially, the rates more than doubled over the 5 year. It went from 24. It's going to hit 54 by 2025 per single unit household. So it would, and we were told, it was presented to us, it was an investment in infrastructure. And now yet once again, we hear the savings are going to go towards investment in infrastructure. So I just wanted to echo that for the sake of the board, since this is a recorded hearing. My other 3 quick questions, please, is for homeowners associations specifically. Currently, homeowners associations represent 200 owners. The HOA gets billed and then we charge them back through the monthly dues. If this thing goes through, does that mean we have to remove the sewer component from our monthly HOA dues and let them individually pay it through their parcels, through their property tax, just so we know how to handle our budgeting come next year? The other question is, in the spirit of transparency, is one of the driving force for this project is to improve your collectability of your billing, of your bills, by tagging team with the county, because we all know they have the highest collections rate. So is that really one of the driving forces there? And as a result, are we going to see are homeowners going to see an increase in liens being put on their homes on the county if they don't pay the sewer portion of their property tax? And my last question is, currently in the current environment, we were told if you are on auto pay, you're not able to generate a statement for us so we see exactly what the current charges are. Is that correct, or did we misunderstand it? Is there a way to be on auto pay and still receive a bill just so we see what the charges are at any point in time? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to try, I think I've got all the questions, but I'll kind of refer to Rachel to make sure I address them all. So kind of in reverse order, the auto pay, yes, unfortunately, that is a limitation with our system right now, that basically if you're on auto pay, you do not get bi-monthly statements. The idea is you do get a letter, at the beginning of the year that basically states what your new rate is. But the thought is basically because the rate is not changing during the year, we're just sending you basically one notice versus an ongoing notice because it's automatically being withdrawn from your account. As far as questions on liens go, so actually the number of liens will dramatically decrease because our staff actually is the ones that work with the county to put basically liens on the tax roll, and that usually occurs every year by August of every year. This will change a lot because in essence, what the county does not look to put liens until basically a property is delinquent, my understanding, for 5 years, basically. And one of the positives, and you mentioned this earlier in one of your questions, is that their overall delinquency rate is significantly lower than our delinquency rate. Our delinquency rate is between 3 to 5%. Theirs is less than 1%. So that's definitely a plus of this program. One of your other questions was about, basically, in the HOAs and, how that's going to work for basically the payment of the fees. So you're right. Those are going to go directly to the property tax owners. So this is something we're going to be working with the HOAs on to basically let them know that going forward, that is not something we're going to bill to the HOA. It's going to go directly to the property owner. And so they need to basically work with the property owners to let them know that their fee should be adjusted for a reduction, that they'll no longer be billed for. Rachel, was there? Yeah, the other things? Go ahead.
Just wanted to note that, we don't have jurisdiction over how HOAs may handle this change. But as Fred said, the plan is to, we know all of the HOAs. So the plan would be to engage with each of them to make it really clear the amount that we are going to be collecting from each resident via the property tax bill that is no longer going to be billed directly to the HOA. I had one other point I wanted to make on HOAs and it just fell right out. But yeah, let's move on. I'll share it if it comes to me.
Next user's question is from Maria Lopez. Go ahead, Maria.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We were just wondering if there is a salary for your board members. Do they receive a salary?
And I really have to give kudos to our board members because they really get very minimal amounts. In essence, what they get is they get $100 stipend for each, committee or board meeting that they attend. I mean, given all the work, that they do for our agency, it's really not a lot of money. And so, it's a really true credit to them of their dedication to our agency. So they get reimbursed for mileage, but that's about it.
Okay, I'm gotta go next because I don't want to forget this again. So back on the HOA comment. So again, yes, we won't have jurisdiction over it. So we do plan to work directly with the HOAs if this is approved to help them understand those fees. But we also plan, so currently we only communicate with the HOA, right? We don't communicate with the property owner because they have one of those basically like third party authorizations in place where they pay on behalf of all of the units in their complex or their neighborhood. We will be communicating directly with the the HOA, but also each property owner so that we can help advocate and they can help advocate. So it's going to be a multi-prong approach on HOAs and communicating the change if it is approved. That's it. Okay. So we're now going to move. Thank you all. Oh, sorry. Did you have a question? Yep.
In this last round of liens that the agency currently places on people's property they don't pay, there was, I think, over 40 liens between $140 and $160. So as the CFO, do you think that is a good idea to be liening properties for such a small amount of money? And what is the penalty if somebody owes your agency $150?
Well, basically, I kind of to answer that question a little bit is what we've done over time. We've tried to basically adjust the amount that we put as a lien as basically at a minimum a 2-month amount of billing. So we've obviously, as our fees have gone up, we've adjusted that over time. And what we did this time, if I remember right, I think we actually raised it to, if I remember right, I think to $200 to basically address, to kind of bring it up a little bit more. But, we want to basically be fair, to all of our ratepayers. And what we try to do basically when there are delinquencies is really give people several opportunities to address those delinquencies. So we actually, before we even look to propose to put them as liens, we actually send them 3 delinquency notices in advance saying, hey, you have delinquencies, we need you to pay to avoid, putting a lien on the roll basically. So there's 2 types of penalties that take place. There's a penalty that's interest, if I remember it's 1.5% a month. And then there's a certain penalty rates. These rates are basically defined under state law. So that's what we follow. We cannot exceed the state maximums for those.
So if the county is assessing a fee, if you get a lien and the county is assessing the fee, and then the agency also has a fee, right?
Well, okay. So what'll happen is, right, if basically we put your delinquent bill, as a lien, with the county does have an additional basically administrative fee that they will tack on in essence to that. Yes.
Yeah, because I'm asking this because, I'm in like 2008 or 9, my first political meeting ever was Monterey One Water meeting, my first ever political meeting. And I've followed them for a long time. And it was because I missed one bill. And it was $57 for the 2 months. And then I was up for my second bill, and then bam, because it was the timing, I got a lien. I got a lien for a very small amount of money. $60 or $70 was the total lien amount. And it was $35 to the agency, $35 to the county, and 1.5% interest on this very small amount of money. Monterey One Water has been terrible at billing. And this is an example of why we're going through this now, because the agency has been so bad with the billing. They've been good on certain aspects with treating our wastewater, but really bad with the billing. And so my last comment is, if you're going to put it on the tax roll, you should allow people to opt out. So if people don't want to do it, then opt it out, and that will solve all the problems.
So I do want to address one thing on the liens. This is actually what we think is actually one of the advantages of going to the tax roll. We basically, and I mentioned this earlier, basically, we will not be putting most of the bills on as liens going forward, because in essence, the county will be handling that. And they have a different collection cycle for basically when they, in essence, would put a lien on your property. Typically, my understanding is unless you're 5 years delinquent, you would not receive, a lien on your property. So in essence, the number of liens would substantially, be reduced. As far as an option, really, honestly, as far as opting out, we've looked into that administratively wise. It'd be an administrative nightmare for us to try to do that. So in essence, for us, it's really 1 of 2 options. If the board decides to go forward, with us putting on the tax roll, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll, obviously look for another billing vendor, and continue to do it bi-monthly.
All right, so as we have on the screen, we're now going to move to feedback. So comments. If anybody would like to share. So if you're in the room, we can bring you the mic to make a comment. We will have, similar to public meetings, a 3-minute timer on comments. But there are other options if you don't like to speak. So you can follow that URL or the QR code, which will take you to an online form. Mike is going to have a stack of comment cards. And so you're also welcome to write down your comment. And if you really prefer to talk with somebody, you're welcome to call Mike or email him. We put his email, up on the screen. And you can also use your bill and just call our direct customer service line, and they can connect you with Mike or may be able to assist you as well on the call. So moving now to feedback or comments. Let's start online. Yes, and so we're going to start online. So if you are participating via Zoom, please use the raise your hand button. And if you are participating via phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. Okay, so there's nobody right now, so I'm going to open it up to the room. Would anybody like the microphone, like a comment card, like to take a photo of the screen? Yep, you have one. Okay. Oh, he's giving me. No, I think she wants to talk.
My concern is about putting the fee on the tax. Things change over the years. Now, my fee annually is $1,300 right now. And if that's on my tax bill and things change and this is not the smart payment plan does not work out eventually, it bothers me that will still be on my tax roll, and I will, if I can't pay it, I will be in jeopardy. That's my comment.
Thank you. I'm taking notes, but we will also transcribe the recording later and have them available once seated. All right. Well, we thank everybody for participating. Oh, I'm sorry, were you trying to get, oh, sorry, I thought you were trying to get our attention. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, no, thank you. Oh, all right, sorry, one question online. I'm sorry, one commenter online. You want to pull up the timer?
So here's a comment from Lori Mazuka. Go ahead.
Hi again. Yeah, it'll be a brief comment. It's one of the things I forgot to put on my form that I filled out. And that is just that my feelings and many people I've spoken with, billing is a cost of doing business. And I get that you're trying to save money. And yeah, it looks like we all save money, but it doesn't really feel like we're saving much money when the costs keep going up. And personally, for transparency and just keeping at the flow of utility bills, being separate from being on a tax bill, and also without any kind of fears of future Pandora box openings where trash collection and PG&E and others might then go, yeah, we don't want to pay a billing position either. We want to save money on billing too. I just think it would be better to get a good billing person, a good billing department. I personally would feel better about my money going to a better billing situation, even if a portion of it needs to do that, than to have it tacked on the property tax bill. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we appreciate you taking the time to engage with us this evening. Mike's email is up on the screen if anybody would like to email him. There's also, we have multiple numbers you can call on your bill if you'd like to speak with anybody. And with that, thank you for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a cleanup process, so if anybody's still writing a comment, we'll be here